Hi everybody, and thanks for viewing this YouTube fly tying tutorial. The pattern I'm going to tie for you today is one that's a little more known in the Czech or Euro nymphing world. It's called Napoleon's Dynamite. I learned about this pattern a few years ago from Brett Bishop. He was a member of team, the fly fishing team USA, and this is one of his really go-to patterns whenever he was fishing in competitions. I'm going to modify it in a couple instances, but not so much to take away from the integrity of the fly. For starters, I'm tying this on an Allen fly fishing hook. It's their J100 jig hook. I'll tie this pattern between sizes 12 to 18. Whenever you're tying on a jig hook, you need to keep a couple things in mind, but most notably the fact that this fly will be pretty much running upside down. That's a great thing if you're trying to keep it snag free. However, you have to also understand that if you're tying a nymph on a hook like this, it's going to be riding this way and you have to adjust accordingly. Thus, most of the nymphs that I tie in jig hooks are tied in the round, or no matter what way you look at them, they look the same, similar to a woolly bugger. Next, I added a tungsten slotted bead to this. I also added for that tungsten slotted bead, it is a disco bead, which are really cool beads right now. The beads that I'm using, let me zoom out just for a hair. These are from Rip Lips Fishing. You can check them out at riplipsfishing.com, and they don't say slotted on them. In fact, they say faceted. I recently learned that faceted is the same as a slotted bead. That's the type of bead you'll want to use on these jig hooks. Do you have to use a disco bead? Absolutely not, but they are just absolutely cool looking. I can't tell you one way or another if they catch more fish, but they sure seem to, in my opinion. What makes them so unique is the fact that because they do have that disco ball look, they're just shooting light off in every direction. After I put my tungsten slotted bead on there, I added a little bit of 0.015 lead wire, no more than about 5 wraps. 5 or 6 wraps. I really go gentle on this pattern. Then I'm just going to take the bead and work it around till it's in that right location. And then I'm going to take this lead wire and push it up inside of the bead. Therefore, I'm kind of locking that bead in place, which is a good thing. The thread that I'm going to grab is some hot orange. I'm going to be using this because I want to tie a tag on this pattern, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Let me cut this excess. This stuff doesn't like to tear too easily. As I get near the base of the hook, I'm going to add a little bit of tailing fiber, and in this case it's going to be peacock crystal flash. I'm just going to grab about 3 fibers for the tail. If you want to add 4, go right ahead. 2 is acceptable as well. Let me tie these in. I'm just going to tie them in with 1, pull them so they are lined up, and continue wrapping back. Now as I wrap back, I'm heading towards the rear. I'm going to hold them up, just pinch them up just a hair. I want to make sure each wrap is next to the previous one. Then I'm going to wrap forward. And the same thing, I want to make sure my wraps are close to the previous one. In fact, I'm going to actually taper this back just a little bit. I'm going to wrap back about 3/4 of the way. Oops. And then wrap forward again. Go over that lead wire just to lock that in place a little bit. And then just tie it off with a half hitch. I'm going to cut my orange thread. And I'm going to do the same with the tailing fibers. I want them about the length of the body. So I can pull those tight and just trim and let those extend back. Now the reason I'm using orange, this is something that Brett has on one of the original patterns. I'm actually tying in the orange because I want to use that as a hot spot at the back of the fly. So I'm going to be tying a brown body for this pattern, for the Napoleon's Dynamite, but I'm going to leave that orange right there at the back because that will be a nice little hot spot if I'm fishing a stream that gets a lot of pressure. A lot of guys will tie hot spots with with threads like this or with Globe-Right, and they'll tie a hot spot at the front as a collar. And that's not a bad thing to do. In fact, I'm going to be using orange again at the front of this. However, adding that little orange at the back is also just another little hot spot indicator that will separate your pattern from others in the water. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, next I'm going to go with brown thread because the body of this fly is brown. So I'm just going to take a little bit of, I believe this is UTC Rusty Brown. I like that rusty brown color. It looks really good under head cement because we're going to be placing head cement over it. So the same as before, I'm just going to go over that orange a little bit, make sure I have all that orange locked in because I just put a simple half hinge to get rid of it. Then I'm going to wrap back And I want to just leave a little bit of that orange exposed, about that much. Next, I'm going to tie my ribbing. I'm going to be using like a chartreuse colored crystal flash. I'm just going to take one of the strands of that, lock that in place, and then wrap back just a couple more, again making sure I have that little almost a butt section of orange. Then I'm going to wind forward. I'm going to wind forward and back a couple times because I want to taper this body just a little bit. So as I wind back, I'm not going to wind back the full distance each time. So I'm going to stop just before I get the whole way back to the brown. Ensure that I have all that orange covered. Wind up. Wind back again. This time stop a little less of the way. Forward. Back again. And I have a nice taper that's developing with this fly. Next, I'm going to wind my ribbing forward. And after I have it sipped away, I'm going to just simply lock my brown in a little bit more. Put a half hitch in and trim that away too. All right. Now if you have a little, you can see I have a little strand exposed there. That's not going to affect this at all. At this point, I'm going to coat my fly body in varnish. In fact, I'm going to put 2 or 3 coats on, and that I really want to build up the body. I want to protect it, but the nice thing about that varnish is by placing the varnish over the body, it's going to allow this fly to really just sink quickly into the water. We already have a tungsten bead on it, which is going to add some weight. We have that lead wire, and then by us putting that varnish on the body, it's really going to just allow this to drop quickly. Now, there's a couple options for varnishes out there and for coatings. Brett recommends the hardest hull, which is a great choice. You can put 1 or possibly just 2 coats of that finish on it. You can also go with a Loon UV clear fly finish if you're into some of the UV curing glues. I like UV glues a lot. However, it seems like whenever I use the UV glues on this pattern, it really darkens things up. You can go with Griff's thin multi-coat, but just like some other things, the thin will really cause you to have to add around 3 coats, maybe 4 at times. I've also had some success with this Fish Pimp Headstrong stuff. It's nice, it seems to gel a little bit, but it also does darken up the fly. So I'm going to stick with this Vineyards. It's called Cellier. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Cellier. And it is #1 clear. That's the one you want to get. This stuff is not easy to find, but it makes beautiful heads on flies. If you're a salmon fly tyer, you probably know about it. It just makes beautiful finishes on flies. So what I'm going to do is I'll add 1 coat, then I might turn off the camera, add another coat, and I'll let you know exactly how many coats I put on. Whenever I add coats, I'm just going to simply grab my bodkin, dip it, and stroke back. Dip, back. I just want to paint the entire fly once, the whole way back to that hot spot. And then I'm just going to give this some time to dry and add an additional coat. It's at this point that I would recommend to you that you can tie up 5 or 6 of these. As they're drying, tie up, continue to tie. As those ones dry, then you can put them back in, put their second coats. If you want to store these on a drying rack, that would work fine. But you can see right now it's drying. That green is really shining through the body, and that orange hot spot at the back really does show great. So I'm going to pause this camera right now, add another layer or 2 of the varnish, and then I will finish the Napoleon's Dynamite. Okay, I have my varnish applied. I put 3 coats of the varnish on this right now. You can see it has a real slick, nice, hard finish, and I'm ready to finish off my thorax. I'm going to go back to the orange thread, because even though I do have a tag hotspot, I want to basically create a collar hotspot as well. So I'm just going to build up the head a little bit with this orange thread. Get it out of there. We're going to add two different colors of dubbing. We're first going to add some SLF Prism Peacock color. Has a really nice grain to it. And then we're going to finish it off with the same brand, but this orange color. The orange is called Fluorescent Fire Orange. If you don't have these exact colors, this exact material, that's okay. I mean, you can go with just regular peacock if you'd like. This prism really just gives off some really nice colors since it is a synthetic. I'm just going to apply a pinch of dubbing directly onto my orange thread. I basically want to make 2 turns of that peacock. 1, 2. No more, no less. Then I'm going to finish it off with the SLF Fluorescent Fire Orange. I may grab just a little bit of a bigger pinch of dubbing, and that's of the orange. I'm going to apply it to my thread just loosely. You don't have to worry about making a dubbing loop or anything. I should make about 2.5 turns. That's about it right there. And it looks like it's going a little crazy. If it is, I'm just going to back it up a little bit, pull it off, just retighten it on my thread, and finish it. At that point, I want to build up a nice little collar for my hotspot. I'm going to put 1 little half hitch in there just to make sure everything's locked in place. I have a nice collar being developed, and it's at this point I'm going to extend my thread, put in a half hitch. I'm sorry, put in my whip finish. And put in 2 just to really make sure everything's snug. Once it is, trim my thread away. Alright, and the final thing I like to do to this pattern is just grab a little piece of Velcro. This is my dirty Velcro. Just kind of pick it out apart. Pick it out just a little bit, just in the thorax. Just to give it that buggy look that I really like in these patterns. Now, if you pick it out and it looks a little too buggy, kind of like this does right now, you don't want all those fibers, you can simply pull them forward, pull some out, and then push them back again. And that will give it that really nice buggy look and create almost a translucent look as this pattern goes through the water. Remember and keep in mind that this pattern, when it goes through the water, it will be going through like this because it's on that jig hook. So with that said, that is the finished Napoleon's Dynamite. Thanks go out first to Allen Fly Fishing for the use of their J100 jig hook. You can check that out and many more at allenflyfishing.com. Thanks also go out to Rip Lips Fishing for the use of these tungsten slotted disco beads, aka the faceted ones. You can check those out at riplipsfishing.com. Be sure to tell Ethan that I said hi. And thanks go out to all of you for viewing this fly tying tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them directly on this YouTube page, or you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. Thanks everybody for viewing this tutorial of the Napoleon's Dynamite. This is a great nymph, and I hope you can tie a few of these up and see how they do on your local waters.